So this video is from day 3, writing equations to model relationships part 2, and it's a cool down called labeling books. So in this lesson, the whole focus was on looking at either tables of values or some real situations and trying to identify the relationship between like x values and y values, or inputs and outputs. And sometimes those relationships are easy to see, and sometimes they're a little bit harder to see. So for this case, we know that the perimeter of a square is always 4 times the side length of the square. If P represents the perimeter and S is the side length, then the relationship between the two measurements can be expressed as the perimeter equals 4 times the number, or times the side length, because the square has 4 sides and all 4 sides are the same length. So if you know the side length for one side, you just take that times 4. That's easy. Now sometimes they might be a little more complicated, so we might have to do some calculations or look for a pattern. So here's an example. A plane departed from New Orleans and is headed to San Diego. The table shows its distance from New Orleans, x, and its distance from San Diego, y, at some points along the way. In class, one of the strategies that we used was drawing a picture. That might help. Or maybe look at how these values over here are changing, or look at how these values are changing, or look how these may be combined together and how that might be changing or staying the same. First thing I thought of was, I don't know, let me draw a picture. So let's say this line here is the path of the plane from San Diego to New Orleans. The airplane is somewhere in between. Let's say it's here. Let's see, miles from New Orleans. That's x. And the miles from San Diego is y. Okay. Well, looking at these two things, x and y together should give us the total distance from San Diego to New Orleans. Let's go back to our table. What's x plus y? Well, 100 plus 1500, that looks like 1600. 300 plus 1300, that's also 1600. 500 plus 1100, that's also 1600. So I think maybe if I were to write a relationship, I could say x plus y equals 1600. The other thing we could have noticed is that as the distance from New Orleans increases, the distance from San Diego goes down. And that makes sense in our model, because the further you go this way, the bigger x is going to get, and the smaller y is going to get. Okay, the sum of the two values is always 1600 miles. We recognize that, so we could rewrite that as x plus y equals 1600, or y is 1600 minus x, or x equals 1600 minus y. So if we take a look at the exit ticket cool down thing, Claire volunteers at a local library during the summer. Her work includes putting labels on 750 books. How many minutes will she need to finish labeling all the books if she takes no breaks and labels 10 books a minute? 15 books a minute. Suppose Claire labels the books at a constant speed of s books per minute. Write an equation that represents the relationship between her labeling speed and the number of minutes it would take her to finish labeling. Think through some of the strategies that you learned in the lesson in class. Think through what we maybe did in the example problems leading up to this. And if you're still not entirely sure, talk to your teacher. Come talk to me. I'll help you. Let me know if you have any questions.